Queensland, so you know all their various titles. If you don't know them, if you could, we'll start on this end. Welcome Mark. Mark Lazarus is the Investment Manager Drama from Screen Australia. Then we'll jump to Mike Cowap, Interactive and Multiplatform Investment Manager, Screen Australia. Then we have Catherine Nebauer, who is the Director of Production and Investment at Screen Queensland. Cieron Cody, who is the Development Executive. And moderating the session is Liz Cameron from Screen Queensland. Thank you.
Good morning, or afternoon as well. Is that on?
Yes.
No, it is.
It is.
Okay. Good start. I thought we'd really start at the beginning and end at the end. But if we start with development, perhaps tracking to Cieron as he's closest to me, you can sort of take me through some of the development stages and the funding available.
Okay, so development, I should say, is geared towards supporting IP creators in the States. So what it's about working with writers and producers traditionally to assist them to get their concepts, their businesses and their projects to a market-ready state. And that can occur over a number of stages and through a number of programs as well. So we work across formats in multi-platform with games, feature film, documentary, animation, TV series, drama and factual. And to accommodate all of those, we do have the Development Investment Program as well as the Multi-Platform and Games Program. So just quickly, the Development Investment Program is geared towards TV and feature content, upon which there is an early stage and a late stage, and there's also television conceptual development to assist with drama and TV factual content to get to a point where a broadcaster will come on board and commit with some finance, hopefully. We assist with games and multi-platform to get prototypes to a stage which might release additional funding further down the line. So that's a snapshot anyway, and we can talk a little bit more about how they operate. Go along?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I mean, I guess really perhaps Mark and Mike, you might be able to talk us through a bit of, I guess, the application process from a Screen Australia point of view and what sort of things you look for in that application process to sort of take it from a concept through to something that's a successful project and how they might access your funding.
All right.
Wow.
That was a big one.
Yeah. There's an envelope that you put the money into to bribe the executive. That's not true. That was a joke. So are you talking about what's the application process for development?
I guess
or
from your point of view, looking at the drama and feature side of things, you know, what would you want to see accompany an application form, just from the I guess the basics through to what would constitute a good idea or a strong concept from your point of view?
Okay. From a production investment standpoint, what I do is I'm a drama investment manager, so I handle applications for feature films, adult television, and kids television. And then Mike will talk about his area after that. But basically, the application, you've got to think of Screen Australia as kind of the end game, not the start game. When you're in production investment, you pretty much have to have every other part of your project together before you get to us. That's not to say we can't help you during the early stages. It's a very large question, but just to say there are two, for instance, in features, there's two different streams. One is simply to obtain a letter of interest, which is a very good tool for producers to take to the marketplace to show, hey, Screen Australia has creatively assessed my show, looked at some of the first deals, and they really, really like it, and they're very likely to invest in it should I be able to get the rest of the stuff together. So that's a very, very useful a tool for producers to take to the marketplace. So for instance, you time it so you get one of those before the AFM or before Cannes, and you're going into the marketplace with a real vote of confidence from Australia's main funding body about your show. And I think there's a whole bunch of technical things that are involved. How many people in here have actually produced either kids drama, TV drama, or a feature film before? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about probably if you've dealt with Screen Australia, but on a very, for people who haven't quite gotten to that level yet, the first thing I can say, and this is such a cop-out, is go to the website and check it out. Also, you've seen me now. I will take your phone call if you want to talk about it and discuss it, but you'll see that you really need to have pretty much your ducks in a row before you come to us. unless you're just applying for the letter of interest application. But to reduce it down to its main parts, you need a complete finance plan, and I believe we've got a slide where we're going to show one at some point. We can show one right now, might be a good idea.
I want to put that up.
And we need the finance plan to be complete, and we need a bunch of other materials which should be pretty much easy to get together once you've had that finance plan complete. But where the magic happens is where you as creators have to really demonstrate your incredibleness, which is you have to have a great show. You have to have a great project. Hopefully by the time it's gotten to us and it's already acquired all of these attachments that are necessary for us to proceed towards investing in it, you've already demonstrated to the world that you've got a great show. And the two cornerstones in feature films are, how many people are in here are interested in feature films? Okay, how about adult TV drama? How about kids drama? Okay, good, that's good. All right, so feature films will be a quick one. But what happens in this situation is there is a rigorous creative assessment process. Because the atmosphere that we are all working in right now is essentially one of deprivation, we are operating against a backdrop where there's very limited funds available for the production of any of this stuff for various reasons. You can take it up with your local member if you wish. And so therefore, we need to whittle the stuff down a little bit, because there's just more applications than we have the money to fund. We'd love to fund them all. And by the way, we're not right all the time either. So you can remind me about that, but I'm admitting it in advance. So just going through this really quickly, the two key elements are, okay, this is the TV drama. This is the TV drama one, which is fine. But it's basically the principles are the same. But basically at the top, you'll see there's a broadcaster has to be involved. Somebody has to be selling your show in the international marketplace. There's virtually no way for any television show or movie to recoup its budget in Australia alone. And that's pretty much the case, unless you're making movies in India or the United States, that you're in the same boat. Those are the only two self-sustaining film industries in the world, and with big enough populations to support and for these television shows and movies to recoup. But okay, so the cornerstone here for is the broadcaster is the nexus of everything. That's for kids drama as well as for adult drama. We have rules about how big their license fee is, because most of you are early in your careers or early in this project thing. I won't get into all of the subtle dynamics of why we ask for such big license fees, other than to say that we are here to fund the good stuff. We're not here to fund just stuff. And that's an important distinction to make because of this limited amount of production funds that we've got. What we're there to do, especially in the area of kids, and in all of it, is to fund the stuff that is going to be hard to finance that we think is awesome. And that's why we insist on minimum license fees, which the networks don't like. They wish that they were lower, because then they could access our money more easily. But I can tell you, we don't end any year with tons of money with any money in the bank. In fact, we reach the end of every financial year wondering, should we pre-commit? Should we pre-commit against next year's budget, because so many good shows are in front of us. So that puts you in the picture as far as the kind of demand that's on our resources. And they're your resources. When I say our, please forgive me for using that pronoun or possessive, whatever, because it's the government. It's you. You know, you're the taxpayers and you're the practitioners. So, and then somehow you got to make up the rest of it with all this stuff here. And the other key stuff, the key elements for you, other than us, are generally a state body like Screen Queensland, and also the producer offset, which is a very, very tasty tax incentive for Australian producers. We all wish that we could get our shows up just with the offset and that we wouldn't need the direct subsidy money. It just doesn't happen very often. It does happen in TV all the time, but in feature films it really rarely happens. It's just Australian films are a niche product, despite the fact that they're filmed and made and exhibited in English. and as you have your show, if you start to get traction on your project, whether that's TV for kids or adults or whether it's a feature film, you absolutely can call someone at Screen Australia to help you and to make to give you where the finish lines are, to give you guidance, and also it's great to have someone whose job it is to reflect back to you where you are in the process if you're new. The older, more experienced people, they already know what they're doing, and they sometimes come in. We had the movie Grandmothers, I think it was called, and then it was called Adoration, or did anybody see the film with Naomi Watts and Robin Wright?
You got one there.
One?
One.
Did we? Right
Yeah,
on.
there's
Okay,
two,
good,
there's
good. Very few people saw that extremely expensive movie. But we didn't spend a lot of money on it, but the people at Gaumont, the lovely people at Gaumont spent a heck of a lot of money on it. And I think it's a great, kinky, weird little picture. Most people let me know what's going on, but the producer of that was the producer of The Matrix, Andrew Mason, who is a friend and a mentor, which I thought would have maybe given me some warning. And literally 2 days before the due date, I warned, hey, guess what? We're coming in with a giant movie with two, international movie stars in it, directed by Anne Fontaine, who just had a huge hit with Coco Avant Chanel. Suck it. It's like I had no chance to sort of get my get ready to deal with it. It's okay. He knew what he was doing. So, but what I'm encouraging you to do as newer practitioners, less experienced practitioners, is to please don't be shy. Call us because we can help you avert your mistakes. And they're not mistakes. It's just hard. If it was easy to make shows, and I can tell you because I've been on your side of the table, I've produced 3 movies. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It's not easy, and in each show, I think I understand what's going on, and then all of a sudden I'm sort of shocked and surprised what happens. I should stop monopolizing the microphone now. So I'm going to give you over to my colleague, Mike Cowap.
My turn. Is it, or did you want to cut in?
No. I mean, I was just going to say, Mark, on that, you sort of talk about that there is a lot of complexity behind the application process, and that perhaps, Catherine, you might be able to, and Mark, speak to how it's useful getting perhaps more experienced people to help you with that process.
On television, I would like to shoot a flare up. Movies, for some reason, we tolerate inexperience more because we always know that the producer, the brand new producer, can come in with a line producer who's done 70 zillion movies. Then that was me on my first one because I had Barbara Gibbs, who's produced more movies than she can count. As my line producer, and she was amazing, and she helped avert me from a lot of mistakes. But on television, it's not us that's going to be the problem. Making television and movies, frankly, is a team sport. You are making something for an audience. Maybe it's worth thinking about the fact that you're making it, that it's being made by an audience, a group, a team. More than that, the networks are risk averse. Therefore, they will want, if you are a newbie, you basically, someone will find an exception to this rule, but essentially, you must find an umbrella to work under. You must find a bigger producer who will give your application, your work, advocacy, and also a guarantee to the network that what you pitch them in the room is the show that they are then going to be delivered a year later or 6 months later. It's why if you look at the history, I think it's a great idea to go look on John Edwards, who is one of the most prolific TV producers in Australia and works for Endemol, formerly Southern Star, and he has made a living out of being a vampire of young talent. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is a mutually beneficial relationship. Great creators come to him with their shows. He's able to bring all of those relationships with the networks. If he likes the show, he can get you the meetings. I think Rory Callahan at Shine is a similar kind of a producer. The Playmaker guys, who are wonderful and have made a couple of great TV shows, including Love Child. How many people have seen Love Child? I'm interested. Good. Those guys have this amazing project, amazing enterprise program called Scribe, and they have been bringing good writers in to turn them into producers, a la the American television model, where the writers and creators of the shows are the people who are actually guarding the vision of the show, taking it forward. But they have these people who are just writers, then have the umbrella of Playmaker to work under. And that's exactly what happened to Sarah Lambert, who had a really good career, but she certainly didn't have the ability to go and make this stuff happen by herself. She was the creator of Love Child 2. That you just want to make it look like you are a playa. And I think the way to look like a playa is to be actually with one.
Can I just jump in and say also on an application form that you might submit, both in terms of development and also in investment, we want to see who are the creatives, who's the team that's going to be supporting it. So those elements are absolutely critical for us as well to look at. So as Mark was saying, if you could, if you don't have the experience, but you can bring somebody else in, it's going to just make your application so much better.
And Mike, perhaps you can talk a little bit from the multi-platform space and the strengths that you look for in an application.
Yeah, so shall I just give some context and set up what exactly the pots of funding that I sit on are? It's quite different to Mark's. So it's multi-platform drama. Has anyone heard of that? Okay, well that's... it's good. It means I can start basic, which suits me fine. And the other one, well, is there any game developers in the room? One. I've got two. Two.
No,
That's double what you thought.
Well, that used to be 50% of my time, but unfortunately we no longer have that fund that closed this financial year. Again, as Mark said, write to your local member. So I'm just talking really today exclusively about multi-platform drama. Now, multi-platform drama is it is a fund that looks to support a really broad range of stuff, from low-budget, edgy TV, including 7 Days Later, which was from Daly Pearson here, through to web series, and right the way through to kind of experimental, innovative, interactive projects and apps. Kids-wise, because this is about kids after all, we do tend to do kids stuff, but it's often on the interactive side. I would say actually every one of the e-books that we've done for iOS or for Android for touchscreen has been for kids. But we haven't done any kids TV through this strand, and we haven't done any kids web series. Not to say we wouldn't, but there might be reasons why. So just going, I guess, straight to the heart of what the vision for the fund is, it's really about kind of doing stuff that's new, about taking risks. So we're looking at new talent, but we're also looking at new ways to monetize content, new platforms, new ways to reach audiences, new formats for your content. We're just trying to, it's a cliche, but trying to find things that push the envelope, things that don't fit in anywhere else within the agency. It's a relatively new fund, and at the moment we have deadlines twice a year, but we're hoping that that'll change, that that'll be rolling and you'll be able to come in at any time. And it's a fairly healthy pot of money, and you can get up to 500,000, although typically very few do, obviously. You don't need any marketplace attachment. The ones that do get 500,000 typically do. And what are we looking for? Well, at the heart of every good application is a great story, a great idea from talented people being told well. Everything after that is kind of secondary, although that's maybe a bit blasé of me, but other things are, do you know your audience? Do you know where they hang out online? Do you know how to find them? Have you got a really good marketing and distribution plan? What kind of money are you asking for? Are you bringing some from anywhere else? That can always make it more competitive. What else? And I guess just really good application materials that demonstrate all the above. That's probably it for a first splurge of an answer.
I mean, Cieron, maybe I'll throw to you, because I know, Mike, your gaming side has taken a fairly brutal cut, but Cieron, perhaps, Cieron, perhaps you can talk a little bit about Queensland's multi-platform and gaming area and the funds that are accessible there.
Sure. Well, the Games and Multi-Platform program is a joined pool of cash, and we do we cater to projects and businesses that are dealing in that marketplace in both areas. As far as the multi-platform standards go, I think Mike pretty much took the words out of my mouth in terms of the things that we work towards and the things that the standards, the levels of competitiveness that we're after. But when it comes to games, there's two stages. There's early stage and then there's production, really. So Catherine will facilitate production, and development would facilitate the development of prototype materials to a point where a project might be able to access funds down the line. So it's really about supporting practitioners with a really strong understanding about their project and how they're going to get that to the marketplace. So we'll evaluate a project based on its conceptual materials and its commercial materials as well. We are somewhat risk adverse in the sense that we take guidance from the commercial viability of a project. So whilst a project or an application might have an incredible narrative core if it's multi-platform, or it might be conceptually very strong in our view, what also matters is how that's married to the commercial ambitions of the project and the team's perceived ability to be able to achieve the proposals that it sets forth. So when we're talking about money at early stage, when it comes to both games and multi-platform, development can look to assisting with a contribution of up to $10,000. That is a contribution and it is investment. So the idea is that in the spirit of making commercially guided decisions, we're looking for projects that are likely to reach their commercial milestones and hopefully repay that investment at a negotiated point in time. When you're talking about production, it's a little bit more money, but it is modest. And we're looking for robust budgets whereby an applicant can, they might employ deferred fees or show that they can get funds from other places, but we really do acknowledge that it's very difficult to get pennies right at the beginning. So,
I didn't mean to cut in for you to stop. I was just going to add something before, because I didn't talk, because the fund that I'm talking about, multi-platform drama, it is exclusively production. We don't have any development funds. We did once. I kind of lament that they've gone, but when we were revising the guidelines, the industry didn't seem to be particularly interested. They thought we should push money into production. Anyway, I'm digressing. The point is, I tend to see this fund as a form of development in itself, even though you're contracted as production, you're applying as if you're making something and you're putting it out there. But it's a very public form of development of an idea. It might be an idea of characters and scenarios in their early stages that you are going to be putting live on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever, that ultimately you hope could be a feature film or a TV series. And that to me is a type of development. It's building your audience, and it's a very public kind of development where you might make mistakes, but it is development nonetheless. What we don't do is that kind of development that happens behind closed doors. That has to happen prior to you coming into us.
Mike, you spoke a little bit earlier about monetization of the idea and being able to demonstrate that. Can you give some examples of what that might look like? And obviously, there are many different ways that it can play out.
Yeah, so specifically with multi-platform projects, so things like your web series or apps. I mean, there are, let's see, we're in quite a luxurious position. When I talk about risk-taking, that we don't necessarily need to be 100% confident that a show is going to make any kind of money. We can get into it for other reasons. It can be, an exploration, an experiment. But there certainly are ways to monetize this type of content. It's difficult because it's so noisy out there. There is so much stuff that you're competing with, most of which is free. It's very hard to get people to pay. So, my advice tends to be, for example, we just funded a web series. It's from the creators of Wilfred, and it isn't live yet, but it's just about to be. It's teaching Australian culture and language to Indian call centre workers. It's a comedy. It's an out-and-out comedy. It's just sending up kind of the stereotypical Australian. And this is going to come out as a web series on YouTube. And I was talking to the producer, who is typically more used to the normal ways of monetizing content. And he was debating whether or not he could charge for these videos. And his social media guy and I just very quickly talked him out of it, because people really won't pay for content online in that way, but especially not if it's a brand new brand. They just won't take that. It's not the behavior that we see. So the ways that people are monetizing this kind of content are more lateral thinking. It's more smaller amounts from different areas, but it really hinges on building your audience first and then finding your way to monetize them. The people that I know who are making the most money out of online content and this kind of multi-platform stuff are people who worked for a long time building up their audience, like people like Natalie Tran or My Chonny or Superwog on YouTube, who then monetize the content, not by charging for that content itself, but by doing personal appearances, selling merchandise, live shows, and moving their career into other phases where they can get paid in a more obvious traditional way. That was kind of a long-winded answer, but I should probably shut up.
Thank you.
All right.
Catherine, can you perhaps speak a little bit to the production investment side of multi-platform and probably some of the areas that you would look for from a Screen Queensland perspective?
Sure. We have a budget of up to $50,000 that we will invest in both multi-platform and games. It's very similar to what Cieron was saying in terms of what we're looking for is the sort of we're looking for a great concept, but we're also looking for the commercial realisation, the commercial ability to see returns. I think that's really interesting what you say, Mike, in terms of the fact that it's not always as clear cut as it's going to be something that people will pay for, download to own, that type of thing. It's, in often case it has to be, quite a big marketing idea and big marketing plans and sort of different areas that people are reaching at. We've probably been seeing more in the games area as opposed to multi-platform, but we're now starting to see multi-platform change, becoming more, I guess, featured in terms of the investment ask and that sort of thing. And definitely it's the relationships that they're looking at building with, in some instances it might actually be suppliers of content that is not, so it's quite complex in some of the ideas that are being put forth, and in fact they're building brands more so than anything else to be able to sort of see monetisation back to them. This is the multi, is this a... Yeah, this is, I think, it's the next one. Anyway, no, it was actually the Screen Australia multi-platform. But anyway,
it's pretty basic, so I can talk.
Yeah,
I can
sure.
talk about it quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say that a third of the projects that come into us, the finance plan is just Screen Australia, and at least kind of 25% that they've pulled together themselves through in-kind and their own cash. That's about a third. Another third maybe is that plus some money from the state agency. And another third has managed to get some kind of marketplace money attached, whether that be a broadcaster or a telco or a brand or a publisher. We don't need marketplace attachment. And in fact, we tend to find the more experimental is the wrong word, the more kind of innovative and out there pushing the envelope stuff typically doesn't have marketplace funding attached, because marketplace usually only gravitates to the more conservative projects. That's a typical finance plan.
What would the marketplace on this be? Who would it be on a multi-platform drama?
It might be ABC doing an iView deal, a non-exclusive iView deal, or SBS, or one of the other broadcasters. Little bits of money from online video platforms. But yeah, typically, as your question alludes, there's not a lot of money out there. That's where we come in.
I just want to know where. I want to know where to go myself.
I can't really talk to this project because it's still at sort of exploratory stage, and they've and they're looking for private investment money and all the rest of it. But there is a really interesting concept that we've put some investment money into, and it's because they're taking a concept that has a really big fan base already, and they're working. Excuse me, they themselves don't own the content, but they're working with those companies that own that content. And this is very traditional television content that is something that has been in our lives for a long time. But what they're doing is they're doing brand extensions around that. And because they're taking really popular characters, they're taking sort of something that has global reach and global appeal, then they've already got an audience potentially that they can sort of, you know, extend that brand. So they're thinking, you know, there's companies that are thinking very innovatively about attaching themselves to existing brands that haven't really gone into that space and looking at how they can apply their knowledge and their expertise to really exploit that. So those are the other sorts of things that we're really interested to see.
And I think what we're very sympathetic to is the fact that it is a changing landscape, and we're all kind of continually wrapping our heads around new possibilities and seeing new case studies out there that pave the different pathway into monetization. So in respect to that, we are very open, and what that means is we take on board whatever your case is, and we have a conversation about that, and we want to learn from you guys about the market that you're trying to tap into. And we take your lead in many ways. We consult with the broader industry as well. So in terms of evaluating the strength of the project on its commercial merit, it's a broad conversation. But at the end of the day, there's no one path into monetization. So
it's always good if you've actually got money from Screen Australia, because then we can say, yeah, that's a tick.
Such power we wield.
But if you don't have money, maybe you have something else. So what kind of features are you wrapping around your proposition that allows you to rise above some of the noise and give you more of a competitive edge? Applications, I mean, this is money, but, you know, crowdfunding in significant numbers can be a real good indication that there is a community of people out there that would be interested in the product that you're offering or intend to offer, or, you know, you could be engaged if you're a gamer with a platform or a distributor like Steam, you know, or you could have a community of people who are just expressing interest in that project, and they might all be pledging or they might be expressing that interest. And these are things that we have received, and we look favourably upon them. And they're a good way around not having money at the very start of an application or getting that project up. And also your track record as well, or if you can get into bed with someone who has a track record in a similar way, or you can prove to a point, demonstrate that you have invested in this project or have similar projects behind you that have tested the market. You may not have got the results that you were after, but you've learned some lessons that is strengthening your strategy in moving forward.
Thanks, Cieron. I mean, what I was going to ask from a development side of things, obviously with production, it's on a more advanced stage, so by the nature of that, you want the attachments to be sort of more clear and demonstratable, but perhaps from an early stage development point of view, is that as prevalent? Do you need those attachments both in multi-platform and more traditional?
You don't need them. We really take it on a case-by-case basis, but you do need to rise above, and you want to be competitive in some way. Those kind of attributes or those attachments are things that we've come to receive and come to get used to, and we understand that it's possible to achieve those or that level of interest early on. We try not to be too subjective in that. If it's an idea that we really, really like, we don't want to be the gatekeeper in so much as saying, well, we like that, so we'll fund that. We want to see the team and how what they're proposing is realistic and is reaching into a rich understanding of the market, the audience, and there's a rational sequence of plans that underpin that strategy. So no, and yes, it really depends.
Okay. And sorry, Catherine, did you want to add to that?
No, I mean, again, when we're looking at an application, I guess, we've got obviously multi-platform games, and then we've also got our other investment areas, that we sort of cover off everything in terms of documentary, factual, kids, drama, film, etc. Again, to sort of raise a point, it's always good to get online and look at what we've got in terms of the funding guidelines and that type of thing. It's sort of like you need to do some investigations on your own as well, but we're also happy to help, and we're also happy to send you links and show you how to sort of basic steps in terms of the types of information that we need to be able to fill in an application form. But again, it's pretty straightforward in the terms of, you know, investment we're doing in film and television, etc. It's what's your marketplace attachment? What's the team that's behind it to realise it? You know, what are you thinking in terms of how you're going to be distributing? You know, obviously you've got distribution partners on board, but also how are you working with them to make it more successful internationally? Have you got all of your rights in place? Do you have your, do you have the creative control of the project? So these types of things are really important. Then obviously the finance plan that you saw, we use exactly the same finance plan as Screen Australia, and in all of the forms that we receive. So that's going to be really important. And at the end of the day, the dollars have to add up so that you're well funded to be able to realise the project. In the investment levels that Screen Queensland will put up, in the TV and film side, we usually look at what we call is Queensland production expenditure, which is a QPE. So we're really keen about driving what's happening obviously in the state. We're happy for you to co-produce with international. We're happy for you to co-produce with interstate companies as well. So we're certainly not restrictive on that. But we really want to get as much production work happening in the state. That's what we're really there about driving, and also about driving sustainable businesses and growing those businesses here. But as a rough sort of rule of thumb, it's between 10 to 15% of your QPE that we will invest. And in the case of film and television, it's as high as $650,000 that we'll put into a project. It is an investment, so it's on a pro rata pari passu. So what other, we sort of go with other investors that you might have, including, say, Screen Australia as well. We don't have the same threshold requirements as Screen Australia does in terms of the broadcaster thresholds, because we are in a very different situation. We have a finite budget, absolutely, but we don't have the same demands that Screen Australia has on their funds. We hope we're going to get to that point down the track, but right at this point we don't. So you don't have that requirement right now.
So, I mean, in terms of the competitiveness of the production investment from a Screen Queensland point of view, it's probably less competitive at a certain level than, say, Screen Australia, where the competitiveness for the Screen Australia funds is quite high.
Because we're at a kids conference, it's important to mention that one area where we would love more competition is in the high-end kids drama that we fund, because it's very, very hard for people to pull those deals together. And if there are any experienced kids producers in the audience, they'll know what I'm talking about. And they've been made. You look at the complex web of relationships that go into making a kids show viable, and it's really hard. You've got to spread across the planet or get huge public broadcasters in other countries to contribute massive sums of money. On the plus side, it's where we will happily spend more money than any other area. It is, in fact, we view it as the most important thing we do, because it's very hard for this stuff to really. Kids don't get a lot of money to spend, so advertisers are not so interested. And now the fast food advertisers are being edged out. And as a parent myself, I do remember that period where my children were watching a lot of television, and every 5 minutes it's I want this, I want that. I'm like, shut up. Stop watching TV. If my son could have plugged the Cartoon Network straight into his brain, he definitely would have done that. And also at a kids conference, I did want to say something, an observation we've made recently. If you're looking at making kids stuff, which I think we're all trying to do here, at MIP, it became apparent that the second screen is now the first screen in kids. And this is really important in the view of the multi-platform idea. In a way, we're going to talk about multi-platform, I think, for the next few years, and then it's going to be totally irrelevant, because the idea of a television station or network is going to be platform neutral anyway. Your phone will be a tablet. It doesn't matter where you see it. It's all going to be, these aggregators of content will then be Are we running late, or is that what's
Just-
going on?
just
It's supposed to light up when I hit it, but
Oh,
it didn't work.
Okay. It's on your phone.
Yeah.
So you're watching TV on your watch right there. So the second screen is now the first screen. We've got a great example of something like that, which is was made here. It's called. Is it called Mako Mermaids? What was the title in the
Mako.
end? Mako Mermaids. And sexy teenagers barely wearing any clothes. You can't watch this show in certain territories of the world because it's just too damn sexy. The best deal we did on that show after its Australian broadcast deal was to Netflix in the USA. They paid so much more than any cable show, any cable network ever would have paid, and it was amazing. The deal was the best. And why? Because little girls had the iPad, and they did not watch the show in the main room of their house. They had the iPad, and they went on the Netflix on the iPad. They went to their own room, because the parents sure as hell don't want to watch that show. And so that they do. Well, yes. I really disclose too much in these forums. So you see the point I'm making. Multiplatform. Will it exist for very much longer as a term? I don't know. But that was one thing I wanted to express to you is that's where is the money? And unfortunately we're having this conference right now at the most insane time. We don't know what's going to be happening next. People have been talking about this for years. It's like, what's the future? How does pay-per-view work? Will VOD replace DVDs? Oh wow, Blu-ray players. The cost of Blu-ray players came down. That was going to revitalize the Blu-ray market. No, nobody cares. The idea of a video store is absurd. I mean, there may be a few left in really high population centers, but our kids, I don't know if they even remember video stores. So it is a weird time, and that's why it's important for you all to keep your eyes and your ears open. We're the end game, but you have to risk your hearts and your minds and your creativity to get that thing. You can focus on these plans, and you can focus on, and you've got to know what the end game is, because you've got to shape yourself. You got to get yourself in shape to make sure that you get right through to get your stuff made. But really, if I had a message, it would be concentrate on making that great idea and then finding a great team to work on it, and that's the way to move it forward.
Okay. I think we're sort of coming up to question time. So I'll just throw it out there if there's anyone with any questions for anyone on the panel.
One here. Oh.
I was just wondering, did the successes or failures of some of the game projects that were initially funded under the recently closed down scheme, did that affect the decision to cut down the scheme? And is there likely to be any form of replacement?
I guess there's two reasons why I know that successes or failures had nothing to do with it. One, because we haven't really had any successes or failures yet. We've managed to fund about 40 games over the past 2 years, but very few of them have actually been released yet. It's still in very early stages. And the other reason I know is because I don't think that ever came into the equation. Whether or not any particular, I have to be a little bit careful, but whether any particular evaluation of the fund was given, certainly I don't think in that kind of detail. Does that answer the question, or was there a second part that I missed? Will it ever come back?
No, that's the question. It was just whether or not there would be a follow-up kind of fund, or is there any assessment of change in it in any way?
Look, I think the next 18 months of those games coming out, and also the 10 enterprise companies that we supported and their stuff coming out, I think are going to be really exciting. And I look forward to seeing how much traction we've managed to give the industry in a short amount of time. But it's a pretty clear message from government that Screen Australia at this time has no business in supporting the games industry. So what I would have loved is if, personally, if we could have funneled money from elsewhere back into games, but that's not the message that we're getting from our bosses.
Was there another question?
Marginally quicker.
Where can we find the criteria for the assessment of the creative concepts? Because you were saying it's all about ideas. Is there a criteria that's set in assessing those ideas and deciding to put money into a project? Thank you.
Is this for for games, multi-plat, for drama? Which?
Any good idea?
Well, for us, it's always going to be subjective. If only there was a scientific, empirical assessment process, that would be great. But as someone who's read scripts for a lot of companies and been involved with that, it is amazing how much concurrence there is when something really terrific comes in. Your job as content creators, I don't know, not so much about games, but about drama, is to elicit emotion. And if you look at The Fault in Our Stars, apparently making people weep for 2 hours is good enough. I read a review of that said it is a beautiful machine for the manufacturing of tears. And it's supposed to be great. My son came back depleted from it on the weekend. So I think, but eliciting emotion, laughter, excitement, and narrative pulse, and all of the elements that make, if only it was easy. For feature films, 9 out of 10 feature films from Hollywood fail. So let's be realistic. And some of the ones that are the biggest successes, they're still crap, but they had great marketing. It's hard to make a movie. It's even harder to make a good one. And with the television stuff, it's a little bit less intense, our criteria, because the network knows their audience better than we do. Yes, we weigh in, but we really are responding to the fact that a gigantic national corporation has decided they're going to venture a huge investment. They know their audience, they know with their advertisers, and we try to enable that. But they have to really love that show because they're paying a premium for it. Once they come to us, they're paying their high-end license fees to show it. So I think you have to, I don't want to sound too airy-fairy, but I just think you have to listen to your own heart, and you've got to talk to people you trust and find out if the thing that you've made is working, if the thing that you've created, and go from there. But we'll ask questions, and we will interrogate, and we do give people the benefit of the doubt, and we have disagreements ourselves. We have quite intense fights, which is most of the time a lot of fun, about I think it's great, I think it sucks, I think you suck. I mean, that kind of thing. But so I think, I wish I could be more scientific, but I think the one thing I will say is what really helps for your own assessment of your own materials is context. So if you're working on a script of any kind, read a zillion scripts.
I think what you say is quite representative of development to a point where we can weed out subjectivity as much as we can. We're very eager to do so, and it's part of the motivation for incorporating a level of market, because when you can cross over to the market, well, that subjectivity doesn't really matter so much. So what we try and emphasise or focus on is the standard of professionalism that's conveyed within the material and the narrative, and the ability to work at a professional standard as a writer, as a IP creator. So we want to understand, that the applicant is very aware of the genre that they're working with, they're aware of the craft, and they have a really realistic and rational approach to getting it into the market. We do work with producers more than we do the writer. Of course, by assisting the producer, the writer will then be supported, but we do also directly support writers as well. But when it comes to TV content, we have the conceptual stage, which is just before the early stage, where we will co-finance or match fund. And what you need in that case is an expression of interest from the broadcaster. So what that does is it is an effort to mitigate certain risks. It could be the case that the broadcaster that you're targeting is simply not interested in that content. They're doing something different. It might not be in line with where they're taking their brand or how they want to be seen in the next couple of years, or they simply mightn't like it, or they'll have something very similar. So to get rid of that risk and to show that there is actually a market for it, and we will look at assisting at a conceptual stage on that basis, and we find that's quite a successful way to go about it. Doesn't matter if it has Queensland content or not. It doesn't matter if we like the concept or not. What matters is that we're in a position to support creative business and the sustainability of that business and meeting the needs of both the broadcaster and the audience in that case.
This is just a question about market attachment. Is there any requirements for that market attachment to be domestic, or is it sufficient for that attachment to be international, obviously subject to the relevant kind of thresholds and financial?
Is that in the investment area?
I guess across all of the... I know it's kind of probably going to be different.
Yeah, it definitely is. In the case of Screen Queensland, we don't necessarily need to see a domestic, say broadcaster, so long as you've got someone that's an international, so there's an international broadcaster, for example. From time to time we have invested in projects that have not had a domestic broadcaster, but it's because they've got, for example, a Discovery Asia investment, and it's quite substantial. So we still need to see that the project can reach an audience and that there is an opportunity for it to, that there's distributors, etc. on board that can actually then take it out to other international audiences, and that there might be a return path for us to come back to a domestic audience.
And I should just emphasise too, when we're talking about interest from a broadcaster, it usually is a domestic broadcaster, because it's most likely that they're the ones who are going to form the backbone of your finance plan. So what we're looking at are business arrangements where the broadcaster is liable or interested in putting up a license agreement. We're not interested in supporting projects at conceptual stage on the basis of an acquisition or interest in an acquisition. So that's a distinction that needs to be made.
Think of Screen Australia as your money, which it is. So if you're paying for it, we need to know, you guys need to see it. So essentially it has to have a broadcaster and does have to have an Australia, New Zealand distributor if it's a feature film. So, and also they also all need international representation as well. It's a business. We're trying to get returns as much as we possibly can, and that's the only way. And the one exception is on the very low end of features. If people are doing some finishing, if we're exposed for, $200,000 for finishing money on a feature film, we can bend the rules a lot. But the last rule we're going to bend is the ANZ distributor one. More likely, we're going to bend the requirement for a rest of world sales agent. But try it. If it's awesome, that's the thing. The film industry and television, the film industry specifically, is a hierarchy of advocacy. So you've got something really great and you don't have all the pieces together. Start talking to someone, and if they share your enthusiasm and love of that thing, they might be willing down to kick doors to try to get you the money to make it.
We've probably got time maybe for one, maybe two questions, if there are any more.
Just a quick little case study in convergence. I don't know if you're probably aware of it. I'm probably one of the last to be aware of it. Something called an episode that I just downloaded a couple of weeks ago called Hunter and Hornet. A couple of very silly young men comedy thing, about 10 minutes long, and you actually pay for 3 little episodes, and but they're calling it an episode.
Great, you paid for them. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was
And then
one of mine. Well, I mean,
Then they
I
have
signed the invoices.
They have merch and stuff that you can buy, the T-shirts and the hats and all kinds of. It's basically, bad dating advice, and it's very silly, but called Hunter and Hornet. And it's probably the first time I've heard the buzzword episode. It's kind of an interesting way to launch something.
So you funded it.
Convergence.
Yeah, so it's great that you picked up on that word. I do love the word. Yeah. It was something that we hope Sonny won't mind me telling you, but we kind of talked him out of it because much like the show about the Indian call centre, Sonny came in with the fantastic idea for the 2 of the most useless but enthusiastic pickup artists you can possibly imagine.
That's what these guys
He's
are.
done about 18 episodes or something, and he hoped that he could just release a few for free, and then you had to download the app and you would pay for episodes inside the app. So he coined the term episode. And I haven't heard it used before. I really like it, but I think there's a flaw in the model there. I think unless you're kind of Disney or a big brand, I don't think anyone's going to...
Yeah, I don't know how they're doing. It's worth checking out, though. It's very funny.
So they're all available free, so please go and check them out, especially if you need tips on picking up the opposite set.
That's why I came to Brisbane.
You think he's joking?
Probably time for just one more, if there's any more. Otherwise, we might. No, I think that's it. So thank you all. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you all.